It has always been easy to think negatively of Mike Ashley. Sometimes he makes it so, other times perceptions are manipulated, particularly those held by Newcastle fans. Take the collapse of Amanda Stavelli and PCP Capital Partners takeover deal. The script is Ashley standing in the way of progress. The reality, where's the money? Ashley is a villain on Tyneside, and no doubt about it, he has made mistakes throughout his time there. Maybe most recently, he regrets allowing Stavelli to be photographed so ostentatiously attending St. James Park before the details of her proposal became known. Mike Ashley has made mistakes and is a villain on Tyneside, but he cannot be blamed here. She is, at best, £50 million short of the asking price and probably more yet in the time that elapsed between her first appearance and the breakdown of talks. She has been painted as something of a savior. Her deal, along with the presence of Rafael Benitez as manager, will lead Newcastle to unimagined heights. But again, where's the money? When Sheikh Mansour bought Manchester City, when Roman Abramovich acquired Chelsea, it was quick, not behind the scenes, no doubt. But between breaking ground and shaking hands was a metaphorical blink of an eye. That's money. The takeovers that drag on, that are everywhere, that appear in the press before reaching the negotiating table, where the buying party appears to need the support of popular opinion to force a sale. They are the ones that are rarely what they seem. The script is Ashley standing in the way of progress, but really Amanda Stavelli is £50 million short. This appears to be one of those deals. Stories of Stavelli's interest broke in October. Mid-January we would appear no further advanced. That isn't simply due diligence. That is torpor of a kind that should trigger alarms. We have Rafael Benitez and this opportunity to restore the club to its former glory with the best manager we could possibly get, said campaign group Ashley out. After it was announced the deal was dead. It cannot be allowed to fade away. But what cannot fade? What is there for Newcastle? Exactly. The money that is supposedly promised for transfers. Where is it? The Reuben family that are supposedly part of the consortium. Who says? Not them. An official spokesman for Simon Robben with brother David, top of the Sunday Times rich list in 2016, was pretty emphatic that the family were not investing. Having looked at Newcastle, so where does that leave Stavelli now? Indeed, where has her takeover been all along? Some will protest, but what is there for Newcastle? Money promised for transfers. Where is it? Ashley bought the club in 2007 for £134 million. He is believed to have then spent close to that again on other club projects and responsibilities, not including players. So £250 million doesn't really even get his money back, and that figure is what Stavelli is believed to have offered. This could be why when Ashley walked away this week, he as good as called her a time waster. Whatever his faults, it is not for Ashley to sell Newcastle cut price to allow the realization of some specious dream. It might be your dream to live in a mansion, but you still need the money to buy it. Ashley's price is set at £350 million. Stavelli is £100 million short, unless she can try to knock him down to £300 million, and it would appear one of her main backers has pulled out. If the bid is already stretched at entry level, why would this be such a good deal for Newcastle? Indeed. Why would an investment group be appealing owners at all? They don't invest for altruistic reasons but to make a profit. They are little different therefore, in essence, to Ashley. Stavelli and PCP Capital would still be more interested in what came out, rather than what went in, for all the fanciful talk of transfer spending. Indeed. Newcastle fans might find the new boss not too dissimilar to the old boss at all. They are not strangers to the Ashley model. Most investors, it is not for Ashley to sell Newcastle cut price to allow the realization of some specious dream. Well, that didn't last long. What was it? 4 matches, maybe 5, before VAR's shortcomings were exposed. Actually, it wasn't so much the V as the AO that stuffed up. The video, the technology, worked perfectly, ran its little replay. got its angles just right. Then the dumb old assistant referee came bumbling in and the system fell apart. It is not possible to correct human error with additional humans. The reason goal line technology works perfectly is because science decides whether the ball has crossed the line and we butt out. That wasn't long before VAR's shortcomings were exposed. Willian was tripped, yet no penalty. On Wednesday, it was Mike Jones, the VAR for Chelsea's match with Norwich, who concluded Willian had not been tripped in the penalty area when, plainly, he had. In getting such a basic call wrong, he did horrible damage to a process in its infancy. We accept when a referee makes a mistake. Graham Scott missed Tim Close's trip on Willian, but it was real time, no reruns. He has the sympathy of every neutral. But Jones, armed with a bank of television screens, and he still gets it wrong. This, we feel, is unacceptable. How useless are these referees? No wonder that nice Arsene Wenger ends up going berserk. The problem from here is that once the faith in VAR is shaken, players will no more accept it than the match referee's word. They will not see the remote view as confirmation of fact but as another flawed perspective. Yet this was an accident waiting to happen. The rule makers programmed a fault into the mechanism with the words clear and obvious mistake. Why not just mistake? What is wrong with correcting a mistake? Why does it have to be clear and obvious? 90% of the calls that need referral will be marginal, the tightest offside decisions, the lightest touch causing a fall in the penalty area. That is what happened between Willian and Close. Scott thought the attacker initiated contact. The replay shows Close's tackle was to blame. Was it clear and obvious? No, because it only became so after 2 or 3 showings. But was it a mistake? Most certainly. So why did Jones have to consider semantics as well as the video footage? It is an unnecessary complication. A mistake is a mistake. Correct it and justice is done. The technology worked perfectly in this case. It was the assistant referee who still got it wrong. Stuck in gridlock at Liverpool Lime Street Station last week, the cab driver and I agreed that whoever designed the new one-way system for taxis and drop-offs should be shot. We didn't mean it literally, though. It's a figure of speech. A very poor job has been done and we were steaming. This was the point Darren Ferguson, manager of Doncaster, was making about the referee Andy Baines. Critical of refereeing standards generally following a draw with Plymouth, Ferguson was asked what could be done. Shoot them. It would be a good idea, he said. Of course he wasn't serious. Darren Ferguson's shoot them remark was obviously not advocating violence against officials. Ferguson called it a tongue-in-cheek remark, but it wasn't even that. Really, it was a harmless turn of phrase. That Ferguson has since been forced to clarify that he does not advocate violence against officials is quite ridiculous. If he is like most British citizens, he would not even know how or where to get a gun, let alone advocate using one. Maybe in the United States facetious remarks about shooting officials must be guarded against, but not here. Nevertheless, the Football League, ever ready with a sledgehammer lest a nut rolls past, have charged Ferguson with bringing the game into disrepute. It is preposterous that managers are required to attend press conferences yet are sanctioned for speaking in a way the man in the street perfectly understands. The British Horse Racing Authority will meet next week to discuss closure of the many loopholes that have made a nonsense of their strict liability policy for doping. Trainer Philip Hobbs avoided sanction after a horse tested positive for an antihistamine, while Hughie Morrison received a fine of only £1,000 after a filly, our little sister, tested positive for an anabolic steroid. It was concluded by an independent inquiry that on the balance of probabilities Morrison did not dope the horse. A decision greatly celebrated by the trainer and his allies. Yet what victory is it that undermines an ambitious anti-doping policy and replaces it with nothing? It was 1 year ago this week that our little sister tested positive at Wolverhampton, and while we are probably sure that Morrison did not do it, We still have no idea who did, and this is progress. Hughie Morrison was cleared of doping our little sister, but we still don't know who did it. Ronnie Corbett was sitting in his big chair for his solo spot on The Two Ronnies. The first school I went to was pretty soft, he began. St. Pansy's Primary. You could have a reign of terror with a balloon on a stick. Huge laughs. And not unlike the story of 56-year-old Danny Denison, the self-styled bad boy of lawn bowls who got involved in an altercation with a cage fighter at a hotel in Bournemouth and suffered a broken leg, a black eye and rib damage. Turns out that bad boy stuff is pretty relative between sports. Or maybe he just left the balloon on a stick at home that day. There seems little sense in Chelsea's transfer business this window. They made a late run for Alexis Sanchez but also for Andy Carroll, a limited centre-forward who needs the ball delivered along Route 1 and is injury-prone. Now out for a month. How was he meant to link up with Eden Hazard or Cesc Fabregas? Would Chelsea's midfield have been told to go direct? Antonio Conte wanted Carroll to solve Chelsea's goal-scoring problem. But how could he do that? Carroll has scored 3 goals since finding the net at Southampton on February 4 last year, and 2 of them came in one game against West Brom. He has made 2 scoring appearances in his last 20 matches and, this season, has picked up more than 3 times as many yellow cards as goals. Mickey Batshuayi may have been far from impressive since arriving at Stamford Bridge, but he scored as many in one night against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup as Carroll has for West Ham in close to a year. How was such a player to be the answer to a scoring drought? It makes literal sense that Chelsea have turned to Andy Carroll to solve their scoring problems. Maria Zakharova, speaking on behalf of Russia's foreign ministry, has accused the British government of ordering its media to smear Russia before the World Cup. We learned that reporters from the United Kingdom received a state order, she said. Talking points were developed and offered. Among these subjects I can name Russia's alleged lack of the necessary infrastructure and conditions to hold the championship, the aggressive behavior of Russian fans, a lack of professionalism among local law enforcement officials, and the inability to guarantee foreign tourists' safety. The Western media will be actively pumping out this story in the run-up to the World Cup in Russia. Actually, dissenters won't need to indulge in propaganda if clubs like Spartak Moscow continue confirming our worst fears by posting racist tweets about their black players. Zakharova gives our politicians too much credit too. One look at the papers will reveal this government can't organize a bed in a hospital ward, let alone a sophisticated campaign of international destabilization. Claims the British government have ordered to smear Russia ahead of the World Cup are preposterous. That Ben Stokes' court date, February 13th, now coincides with what would have been his return to the England side in New Zealand is further proof of the obstacles the ECB have faced throughout this saga. No, they have not handled it well to suspend a player when he has not been charged and reinstate him once he has. Is a horrid mess, but the ECB cannot have suspected the case would drag on this long when they made that initial decision. They tried to set an example, to stand on principle by withdrawing Stokes from the England team, and have ended up in fear of legal action for restraint of trade if the procedure drags on into 2019 with Stokes still unable to play. It is not a good look. But it is not the ECB's doing. Stokes must take responsibility for where he was that night. While police and prosecutors have presided over a process spinning out across 18 months or more, whatever the outcome, that is a joke. The ECB have not handled it well, but Ben Stokes must take responsibility for what he done. Clubs lying 3rd, 9th and 13th in the National League will have to choose between their artificial pitches and relegation. In event of promotion to League 2 this season, Sutton United are very much in the mix to go up, with Bromley just outside the play-off places and Maidstone only 7 points off with a game in hand. League 2 does not allow artificial playing surfaces, meaning any of these clubs would not be allowed to go up if that happens. Say the National League, the club will instead be relegated as punishment. It seems rather harsh, yet sadly logical. To protect the integrity and fluidity of the league, all competitors must be willing to progress. If not, the top becomes a bottleneck, stuffed with clubs with no ambition to advance to the Football League, blocking the progress of others. Without the carrot of winning promotion, the competition would become dull and interest would dwindle. That a club could be promoted and relegated in the same season seems incredible, but unless League Two rules change to allow a season of transition, it is hard to see how the National League can operate any other way. Non-league clubs should be prepared to progress and ditch artificial pitches if they go up.